Songs that don't sound complicated but totally are, part 14! An example of a really fun Beatles song that doesn't get talked about a lot is The Night Before. And I want to demonstrate to you right now how much more spicy and fun it is with dominant sevenths on every single chord in the verse. I'll start by playing it, leaving out the sevenths altogether, in which case it's still a little bit spicy and fun because it has the flat 7 major chord borrowed from the parallel minor scale, which is in direct contradiction with the 5 chord that comes later. But bear with me and see how much harmonic depth can be added even on top of that.
We said our goodbyes. Love was in your eyes.
Now check it out with the dominant seventh.
Love was in your eyes. Woo!
So much more fun that way, right? And if I change the voicings up a bit to give this a little more sophistication, I could play something like this.
We said our goodbyes.
And a funny little side note is that it even uses these dominant sevenths on the intro, which is this very cool 1 flat 3 4 5 chord progression to set up the energy of the song. Sounds like this without the sevenths. Sounds like this with the sevenths. If you think you can write stuff like this without knowing your harmony, you are sadly mistaken. Did you know that in the Beatles song The Night Before, there's a little section that has the same chord progression as the Imperial March from the Star Wars soundtrack? Let's see if you can hear it.
Now today I find you have changed your mind, tripping like.
Were you able to spot it? It's these 2 alternating chords in the latter half of the verse. So it starts out in D, but then we jump over to the relative minor, B minor, for the second half of the verse.
Now today I find you have changed your mind.
And if we look at this from the context of D major, we've got the 6th chord, and then we've got the 4 minor chord. The 4 minor chord is very commonly seen resolving directly to the 1. But much less commonly do we see the 4 minor chord resolving to the relative minor, or the 6th chord. And at least for me, it creates kind of this evil sounding vibe because it sounds like the Imperial March from Star Wars. Or maybe the Imperial March from Star Wars was written in this way because this chord progression sounds inherently evil. I'd like to see that debate in the comments, actually. Same chords. Crazy shit. The Beatles really aren't considered to be the best songwriters of all time for nothing. They have a rich and vast vocabulary of harmony, and I believe it's the duty of every songwriter to explore this dimension. Look at one more section from the Beatles song The Night Before.
Last night is the night I will remember you by. When I think of things we did, it makes me wanna cry. Were you?
Such a cool, harmonically creative choice to go into this very jazz-sounding chorus. The other sections of the song can be explained through diatonic chords with some modal interchange, but this is the first time in the song we actually get a different class of outside the key chords, and that is secondary dominants, or in this case, secondary 2/5s. We're in the key of D, but then we get an A minor.
Last night is the night.
And neither of those chords are native to the key of D, but the purpose of these chords, as in so many jazz songs, is to lead us into the 4 chord, G. It's almost like a modulation, but not quite. I would say it still feels like we're in D here, just made a brief stop on the 4 chord. But some people would argue that this is a legit modulation to G. Then we have another secondary 2/5, this time for the 5 chord, A.
When I think of things we did, it makes me wanna cry.
This time we get a B minor 7, which is in the key of D major. Then we get an E7, which is not in the key of D major. E minor 7 is in the key of D major. And then it resolves nicely to this A chord, which then gets turned into an A dominant chord for another verse. Do you use secondary 2/5s like this in your writing? Let me know in the comments. Songs that don't sound complicated but totally are, part 17. You're probably familiar with the Beatles song Drive My Car. It's got a chorus that goes like this.
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. Baby, you can drive my car. And baby, I love you.
But did you know that the verse features some very clever guide tone harmonies? Let me show you what I mean. The guide note of each chord is the 3rd and the 7th, and the chord progression in this case is D7 and a G7. we've got this very typical chromatically descending augmented fourth here between two dominant chords. But to make all that a little bit more interesting, McCartney simply sings a high G note the entire time, just like the sus4 on top of this D chord.
Ask the girl what you wanted to be.
Which doesn't sound spicy if you play it like that, but if I single it out,
Ask the girl what she wanted to be. She said, baby, can't you see?
and all the while John Lennon is singing harmonies, and he's singing the 7th of this D7 chord, resolving that down to the 3rd of this G7 chord.
She said, baby, can't you see?
But it's really this strange, unusual choice by Paul McCartney to stay on this G note for the melody the entire time, which definitely takes this out of the ordinary and into the extraordinary for me.
Wanna be famous, the star of the screen, but you can do something in between.
Songs that don't sound complicated but totally are part 18. Now let's look at the chords in the chorus of Drive My Car by the Beatles.
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star. Baby, you can drive my car. And baby, I love you.
First of all, notice how much more fun this is with a G7 as opposed to a G major 7, which is what you would normally find in the key of D minor.
Baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
Versus,
baby, you can drive my car. Yes, I'm gonna be a star.
so much more sophisticated and fun that way, right? And then it goes into this fun little dominant 7 chain, going to the secondary dominant chord for the 5 chord, that is E7 to A7, and then resolving to the 1. But as a dominant 7th chord, because that's just what the Beatles were all about back in the day. And again, listen to how much less colorful this would be if it didn't have the secondary dominant and instead had the diatonic E minor chord.
Baby, you can drive my car, and baby, I love you. Baby, you can drive my car, and baby, I love you. Woo.
Seriously guys, if you want to be a good songwriter, get into harmony. Did you know that the verse of the Beatles song Norwegian Wood has a little bit of what's called modal interchange? The verse is in D major and it goes like this.
I once had a girl, or should I say, she once had me.
Now first of all, just drink in the beautiful sound of this guitar riff. It incorporates the melody of the verse, and at the same time, because of the way the open strings sound on the guitar, you end up adding a natural 4 or a natural 11 to the chord at the same time as the 3rd is ringing. So you get this kind of sus4 10 chord. Just the wispiest sound of melancholy. The thing that really makes this chord stand out in its beauty is this very crunchy and dissonant major 7th interval between the 4th and the 3rd in the chord. Sounds terrible played like that, but if you hear it in the context of the chord, it sounds awesome. It's just one example of how seeming imperfection in music creates real perfection if it's in the right context. And we're not even on the modal interchange yet. That only happens once the C chord hits. The song starts out in D major and there is no C natural in D major. Instead there's a C sharp, but this is one of the more common borrowed chords to use in this kind of folk singer-songwriter style. It's called the flat 7 major chord, and it's borrowed from the parallel minor scale, so it lends a bit of a darker sound to the verse. I'll try playing it to you without the borrowed chord this time, see if you notice the difference.
Or should I say, she once had me, she once had me.
Let me know which version you prefer in the comments.